Let me say, it started on this morning, that the next 2 weeks, accountability and authority are probably what most of you have really been waiting for all this time. So we're going to get to that the next 2 weeks. The 6 A's that we talk about, I like to call the first 4 the warm and fuzzy A's. And with the last 2, we kind of put the steel rod, we put the backbone back in. But this class is organized around relationships before rules, like we talked about several weeks ago. And this session this week is really, this is my favorite week. And I think in a little bit you'll understand why. I want to start today with a question. How many of you have known somebody who was terminally ill? Terminally ill, most of you. And I've even heard a couple things in prayer requests from this group over the last few weeks on that very subject. The people that you've known that were terminally ill, how was their thinking different than yours? More finite? Definitely. How else was it different than yours?
Unrestricted.
Unrestricted in what way? Explain that a little bit.
Just care less about what other people
Could care less about what other people think.
think. Not in a bad way, but just
I got it. Not in a bad way, but could care less about what other people think.
A different perspective.
And how was it different?
Just the little things that matter.
So let's explore that a little bit. What became less important to the people that you've known that were terminally ill?
Material things.
Material things?
It's more about spending time with, quality time with friends and loved ones.
Quality time with friends and loved ones became more important. What else became less important? How they look? Yep, what else? Work? What became more important? And those people, what was it? Friends and family. Friends and family. Now I want to tell you guys something, and this may be the most important thing you take away from me during our 8 weeks together. This simple statement may be the most important thing you take away. Everybody in this room is terminally ill. All of us are terminally ill. What are we terminally ill of? Life. Theologically, why are we terminally ill? Why do we die? What's the theological root of our terminal illness? It goes all the way back to Genesis.
Adam and Eve ate the apple.
Say it again.
Adam and Eve ate the apple.
So in one word, what is it? Sin. Everyone say it. Just say the word sin with me. Sin. We are all terminally ill of sin. What's the difference between us and somebody that we call terminally ill? They have a date. And their date is probably, say, within a couple of years. Maybe some within a couple of weeks. But they have a date. And we don't. How long do we think we have, roughly? What's our life expectancy in this country, roughly?
80.
About 80? I think it's in the 70s when we're born, but if we reach the age that all of us are in this room right now, it's probably in the early 80s. It's probably in the early 80s, 82 or so. That's how long we think we have. Do I know that I have until 82? I could get in a wreck when I leave here today. I may have an hour left to live. Now, I've loved spending these 8 weeks with all of you. But in all honesty, if I knew I had an hour left, I probably wouldn't be here this morning, right? This isn't where I would choose to spend my last hour, even though I love this. It's probably not where I would choose to spend my last hour if I knew it was my last hour. I'm going to illustrate this one other way. I want you to imagine you go to the doctor's office, and they do a blood draw, and you're waiting now in the waiting room, and the lab is right there, so you're going to get the result pretty quickly. Now, how many of you in this room are under 40? Most of you. How many of you are under 30? Okay, so I'm gonna say your average is 40, even though I know it's a little less than 40. Your average is probably 35-ish or so. So the doctor calls you in, and you go back there and he says, I've got good news and I've got bad news. What do you want to hear first? What do you want to hear first? The bad? Well, I'm going to give you the good news first. The good news is you have 2 hours to live. 2 hours. That's the good news. What's your question? That's the good news? Are you kidding me? You got it mixed up, Doc. Doc says, nope, I don't have it mixed up. The bad news is we did the blood draw an hour ago. And you have 1 hour left. I want someone to look up for me 2 Peter 3:8. Someone look up 2 Peter 3:8. What does that say? If anyone's got it, go ahead and just shout it out.
But do not forget this one thing, dear friends, with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day.
A day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. So, our life is 80 years, and to the Lord, 1,000 years is like a day. Who's good at math in here? Several of you got to be good at math. You're just not raising your hands. What percent is that? What percent is 80 out of 1,000?
8%.
8. That is 8%. If our life is 80 years like 1,000, how many hours is 8%? If 1,000 years is like a day, how many years is 80? If 1,000 years is like a day, how many hours out of 24? Roughly 2. 2. Our life, in the big picture of eternity, our life is 2 hours long. I could argue it's less than that. James says your life is like a mist or a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes. I think of air freshener. When you spray air freshener, you can see it literally for a few seconds, and then it's gone. Our life, folks, is like this. Now, I worry that after this week, everyone's going to go quit their jobs, and garden at home, and raise goats and chickens, and I'm not really advocating that, but I am advocating a sense of perspective that I don't think we really have most of the time. I don't think I have it most of the time. One of the things that's so helpful for me teaching this class over and over again through the years is it makes me rub my nose in what I'm teaching you once a year or every other year. I need to rub my nose in this every other year. I need to think this way. So, today, I'm used to teaching tonight. Today we're going to talk about availability. And we're on page 11, I think. So let's assign these verses to look up. We've got 1 John 3:18. Okay, great. And then Matthew 11:19b. That means the second half of that verse. You'll be able to tell where that is. Who would look that up in the back there? Matthew 21:28 through 31. Okay, great. And then Matthew 19:13 and 14. Who would look that up? Okay, right there. And then if you could get the next one, James 2:18. Then we've got 1 Corinthians 13:1. Who would look that up? Okay, right there. On the next page, Deuteronomy 6:5 through 9. Thank you. And then Psalm at the end, Psalm 146:3 and 4. Who would look that up? Okay, thank you. Love is spelled what? Who's read this chapter in the book? Love is spelled what right there? T-I-M-E. T-I-M-E. Long time ago, when my oldest son Eric was probably 5, we had a little extra time one day, and we said to him, like, what would you like to do? Do you want to go out, to the park, or do you want to go, I don't know, get pizza or what? I don't really remember what was around then. That was so long ago now. He said, no. He said, let's just spend the time. And I think what he meant was we could just hang out at home and play together. But I thought about what he said. Let's spend the time. And I realized something. We are spending the time all the time. You can decide to spend money. You can write a check or not. But you cannot decide not to spend time. You are spending time. You're spending this morning an hour in this room. And that hour will never come back to you again. Today will never come back to you again. So one of my questions is, are we spending or are we investing? Are we spending or are we investing? And I thought what Eric said, even though he didn't see the depth of it at the time, I've never forgot what he said. Let's just spend the time. I realize we're spending the time all the time. Every minute, a minute is auto-drafted from your total time bank account. And you know what? God knows how much time you have left. We think we have about 80 years, right? You guys have an hour or a little more than an hour to go on the 2-hour scale. I'm down to about 37 minutes. At my age, I'm down to 37 minutes. And literally every hour of a real-time day is an hour gone. Am I investing it or am I spending it? Am I wasting it? So right there in those blanks, we are spending time. Only availability to your kids really says I'm putting my walk with my talk. For the last 3 weeks, we've talked about acceptance, unconditional love, making sure kids know that you love them all the time, no matter what. We've talked about expressing appreciation, both for things that we're glad that they did and things that we wish they hadn't done. That part is conditional. And we've talked about affection, demonstrating affection. But all of this takes time. It can't be done without a massive amount of time. I'm putting my walk with my talk. Who's got 1 John 3:18? Thank you.
Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth.
Wow. Let us not love with words or speech, but with actions. And it's basically, let us love in fact. Not just what we say, what we do. What we do. Who's got Matthew 11:19?
There isn't starting with the but part, but wisdom.
Probably,
Okay,
yeah.
but wisdom is proved right by her deeds.
Yeah, wisdom is proved right by her deeds. Basically, sort of the proof is in the pudding, right? We can say something that sounds wise, but the question is, how does it work out? That is completely analogous to what we're talking about today. We can say we love them, but how we demonstrate that is with time. Matthew 21:28-31.
But what think ye? A man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, Son, go work today in the vineyard. And he answered and said, I will not. But afterward he repented himself and went. And he came to the second and said likewise. And he answered and said, I go, sir, and went not. Which of the 2 did the will of his father? They say the first. Jesus saith unto them, Verily I say unto you, that the publicans and the harlots go into the kingdom of God before you.
So what we have here is the dad asked 2 boys to go in the field. One said with his mouth he would, but he didn't go. The other one said, I'm not going. And then he changed his mind and went. Which one did what his father asked? Right? Clearly the one who actually went. Not the one who said he was going to go and then didn't go. And what Jesus is saying here is, look, what you do is more important than what you say you're going to do. And what you do and how you are is more important than what you say. The real rubber meets the road with actions. Matthew 19:13 and 14.
Some children were brought to him so that he might lay his hands on them and pray, and the disciples rebuked him. But Jesus said, Let the children alone, and do not hinder them from coming to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as this.
You know, that was a more recent addition to this outline, but I realized something about that. If our Lord and Savior told his disciples, don't stop the kids from coming to me, let them come to me. The disciples thought the kids were a what? A distraction, an interruption. The disciples thought, he's got more important things to do. You know, you kids get lost. I don't know if they really said something like that, but maybe they did. And Jesus rebuked them and said, let the little kids come to me. If Jesus, our Lord and Savior, who is our role model for everything, if he said to his disciples, don't stop them from coming to me, what should we do as parents when our kids come to us, even when it's an inconvenient time? Now, I realize, you know, there's times when that's not possible, right? You're carrying something that weighs 80 pounds into the house. You're not just going to literally drop it when your kid wants to spend a little time with you. I get it. But the question is, are we usually interruptible? Will we usually stop what we think is important to us and give our kids a little bit of time? A lot of times, they only need a little bit of time. and then they're back off and running and doing whatever it is they're up to again. Sometimes they need more time than that, but a lot of times they just need a little bit. James 2:18.
Yea, a man will say, Thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith apart from thy works, and I by my works will show thee my faith.
Again, there's an analogy here. And I don't want to get into the theology of this passage, which is much debated, but there's an analogy here simply stated that what you show by what you do is more important than what you say. What you demonstrate by what you do is more important than what you say. And that's all over what we're talking about tonight. So that little blank right there, first I'm putting my walk with my talk, and then availability equals interruptibility. If you're not interruptible, what you're telling your kids, and sometimes this is true and sometimes this is valid, what you're telling your kids is, what I'm doing is more important than you. Now, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't teach our kids not to interrupt, we should teach them to be polite, and I agree with all of that. But my question for you as parents, because I think we are prone to this kind of thinking. I think we're prone to think what I'm doing is more important than spending a little time with you right now. And we have all kinds of important stuff that we have to do. Sometimes I really wish I just lived on my own piece of land and I wasn't doing all the stuff that it seems like I need to get done. You know, right now I'm thinking about my tax return. I mean, just what a mess. You want to get me started on that. You know, what a mess. I mean, I wish I didn't have to spend that kind of time messing with all that stuff. But the question is, are we interruptible to our kids? Number 2, meetings, deadlines, and crises. I had a boss one time who I learned probably more from than any other boss I've ever had, but he would be on my list of best and worst bosses. But he gave me an experience that every parenting class I've ever taught, I've explained this to. I had when Eric was in 2nd grade, they had a special little graduation ceremony. So he's, 8 years old. And a little graduation ceremony, and we'd been tipped off that it would be good if we were there. Now, he's really smart, so we thought maybe he was graduating with the most points in the 2nd grade class. I worked about 10 minutes from the school. So I went in that morning and I told my boss that I was very close to him. I'm a financial guy, so I've always worked very closely with the president or whoever the top guy is in the company. So I went and told him, I said, I have to leave here at 9:45. Eric has a little graduation ceremony today. And he smiled and he said, that's fine. He said, now we need to have a senior staff meeting, that's what he called it, and on some important topic. And I'm not saying it wasn't important, it was. And I'm the financial guy, and I need to be there for that. I said, I understand completely, but I have to leave at 9:45. You know what time he scheduled the meeting? Who said that? Somebody say 9:30? You got it. Why did he do that? Did we have to have that meeting at 9:30? Why did he schedule that at 9:30?
Make this more easy.
Right? To really put me in a rock and a hard place. We got in the room, there's about a dozen people in there, and I said to that room, I said, guys, I am really sorry, but I have to leave here in 15 minutes. My son Eric has a little graduation ceremony from 2nd grade, and I need to be there. 11 people in that room understood what I was saying. All the rest of those guys understood. They were fine with it. I said what I needed to say about whatever the topic was. To this day, I don't have any idea what our topic was, but it seemed important at the time. How many times are things like that in business? They seem really important right now, but you know what? Your kids are really important all the time. Anyway, I left. I went to the graduation. Sure enough, he graduated with most points. Blah, blah, blah. I came back. I still remember that. I came back and I walked into the boss's office. And I said, he did graduate with the most points. And my boss said to me, that's good. And I looked at him and I said, you're not too happy with me, are you? And he said to me, I wouldn't have left the meeting. And there was a pause, and I'll never forget what he said next. He said, but I'm not sure I'm right. But I'm not sure I'm right. After that, I worked at 2 places that were an hour round trip to where my kids went to school. And when I interviewed for those jobs, I told the people I was interviewing with, when there's something happening in school, I need to be there. And it's an hour just to get there and back before I've done anything. Some of these things were science parents helping with science classes, they want us to help with 2 classes, that was an hour and a half, that was 2.5 hours you couldn't get around. And I've never had somebody that hard to work with on that since then. But I want to ask you a corollary question. In order to do that, what kind of an employee, it's a brief detour, what kind of an employee do you need to be? Come on, this is audience participation.
Good. Good employee.
You need to be a good employee. Let's go a step further.
Dedicated.
Trustworthy, back up your word, back up your time.
You're all over it. You're all over it. You need to be someone that the boss can count on, and that he or she knows they can count on. And what I've found, and this has been very uncomfortable for me at various points in my career, but what I have found is I can manufacture liberty that the boss doesn't even want me to have if he knows he can count on me, and I know that he knows that. Because he doesn't want me to go somewhere else. And if that's the position I'm in, I can leverage that at times when I really need to be somewhere. I haven't made 100% of this stuff. I haven't been there 100% of the time. But I've probably been there 85% of the time. And you know what? With your kids, that's good enough. Let me ask you another question. How many of you have been to a kids' assembly at school with some kind of holiday? They have Christmas music anymore, so a holiday musical. When you get there and there's this mass of kids right up on the stage, and you glance up there and you see your little tyke up there, what happens? So let's explore the feminine. Before they wave, what do? What are they looking for? They're looking for you. All right? They are looking for you. Once they see you and they wave and all that, will they look at you again? Maybe. Maybe. But will they have this sort of frantic looking for you like they did the very first time? What happens when your little tyke is up there and they're looking for you and they see you there and they do the whole excited thing and they're waving? What happens in their mind right then?
Feel secure.
Huh?
Security.
They feel secure?
I matter.
I matter, right? I'm going to tell you, there's a little checkbox up there for them. And when they see you, a check goes into that box, and that's not on their mind anymore. If you don't show up, what do you think they're doing the entire time? They're looking for you the entire time. I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I'm just telling you that's a fact. That is a fact. If you're not there, your little tyke will be looking for you the whole time. Now, if they know you're not coming, they know you can't be there, that's fine. But you need to be there. I'm telling you, you need to be there 80-85% of the time. If you're there a vast majority of the time, and all of us have seen this, what's the ratio of moms to dads? Which are there more of typically? Moms. Dads, you need to be there. I cannot tell you, dads, how important you being there is to your kids. And you know what? There's 2 groups of kids up there on that stage. There's the group whose dads are there, and there's the group whose dads are not there. And dads, you want your kid to be in the group whose dads are there. Not trying to make you feel guilty. I realize it's not possible some of the time. But if you're a really great employee, if you're dependable, if the boss knows he or she can count on you, when you say to them, I have to be there, there's a good chance they'll figure out a way that you can be there, even if it doesn't seem possible. If you're the one they can count on, there's a good chance they'll figure out a way. How many of you already have enough latitude that you can just do that? Probably a lot of you do. A lot of professionals, usually professionals have a little easier time than that. All right. If you usually do number 4, then when you can't, your kids will understand. Your kids will understand. Who's got 1 Corinthians 13:1? Go ahead.
If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal.
And Josh McDowell talked about this in the book, the clanging cymbal or a sounding gong. The sound is there for a little while. It's there as long as you're talking, and then when your talk is done, it's done. There's nothing to back it up. We want to have more substance in that. We want to have more substance than I said you're important, but I'm never at those schools. We want to have more more substance than that. Together time. That first blank there, if you have an outline there, blank time comes out of blank time. What goes in those two blanks? What's the sort of buzzword? I don't know, is this still a buzzword? What kind of time are you always trying to have with your family? Quality time, right? That was the buzzword when my kids were little, so we're going back a long ways now, 25 years. What's the problem with quality time? You can't just create it, and you certainly can't what? You can't schedule it. That's the next blank. You just can't schedule quality time. Quality time comes out of what? Have you ever had time that you didn't think was really going to be great, and all of a sudden just the magic happened, and something went right, and everybody just made a memory out of that? Who's had that experience? I am very fortunate that in most of my career I haven't had to work a lot on weekends. But we did a computer conversion a long, long time ago when Eric was probably 5 and Kristen was probably 1. And I was there all day on a Saturday. And I was kind of grumpy, to be honest with you. And we decided we'd meet at a pizza place. It's since closed, but we went to Uno's Pizza. We thought it was one of our favorite pizza places when it was open. So we met there, and I was just really kind of in a bad mood. You know, I've been at work all day, and it's been hard to get this computer conversion thing working right. And somehow, when we left there, that was, you know, the Eaton Square Center has a big, you can walk all the way around it, there's a little ravine you can go down. I don't even know if that's still there, but it used to, you could make a big path with, there was fountains, and we just took a walk around there. We had the best time. I will never forget that time. And I'm here to tell you, if you had asked me if quality time would be possible that evening, any time during that day, I would have not thought so. I would have guessed not. I don't know that I would have said it would be impossible, but I wouldn't have expected it. We had a great time. Quality time comes out of quantity time. It doesn't work to say to the kids, hey, we've got 5 minutes, let's squeeze in some quality time. How does that sound? How would that sound if your spouse said that to you? Right? If that's really kind of how it worked out with your spouse, I don't think, not that you guys would even have kids if that was what was going on. I mean, you know, probably not going to be a lot of romance there. So, choices, number 2. Did we talk about Candyland before? I think we did, didn't we? About how much I hate Candyland, but that was one of Eric's favorite games. You know, choices. Are you really available to what they want to do? Or are you always doing what you want to do? So I'm going to run through some of these things pretty quickly so I can make sure to cover some things at the end of the outline. Expectations and an attitude of patience. When you're spending time together, expect them to be 3 years old, or 8 years old, or however old they are. Don't expect them to demonstrate adult behavior or comprehension. Remember, they're smart and logical. Boy, we're really going to explore that in the next 2 weeks. But they're not mature and wise, and they're not advanced, right? They're not experienced. So expect them to be where they are. You know, I keep looking for this. There's a verse in the Bible somewhere where Jesus said, if you meet me halfway, I'll meet you halfway. Does anyone remember where that is? Where Jesus said that, if you meet me halfway, I'll meet you halfway? I mean, I've looked it up online and everything, and I can't usually just type in a few words, and there it is. You know why I can't find that? It's not there. It is not there. The idea, if you meet me halfway, that works fine in business. Doesn't work very well in marriage, and it certainly doesn't work well in parenting. We're the grown-ups. We're the grown-ups. We have to meet them all the way. When we're spending time with them together, we have to meet them all the way where they are. So we must meet all the way, not halfway. I have another suggestion for you, and I have so many mental images that run through my mind when I say this. Watch their faces when you spend time together. A suggestion, one thing that comes to my mind here is when our kids were 2 or 3 years old, I would pick them up and let them press the buttons on the microwave. And they learned where the number buttons, they knew the numbers, they learned where the number buttons were like the time, like time cook 1, time cook 2, power, start, and all that. And I would tell them what buttons to press. You know what? I don't need to watch the microwave buttons. It was so interesting to watch their faces. I would hold them like this, and the microwave's here, but I'm looking at them, telling them what to press. You'll never forget the image of that. You say to your kid, press time cook 1. That's what our microwave used to have. And you watch their faces, and they're like, that's what you see. That's what gets indelibly stamped into your mind. Press 3, same thing, 0, 0. Watch their faces as they take in the whole experience of microwave buttons that are interesting to them. How boring are microwave buttons to us? We don't even watch those. When you're doing something with them, watch their faces. Let that really make an indelible impression. Some suggestions. Errands. When you're running into the hardware store, take one or more of your kids with you. The grocery store. My girls, for some reason, used to like to go with me to the True Value hardware store. Those are almost a thing of the past. But we would go there, and they, for some reason, had a thing for the O-rings. They would find the O-ring cabinet, and they would pull the drawers open and look at the big O-rings, the little O-rings, and I'd be buying hinges or whatever I was there to buy. But they would be doing their thing. We had time in the car on the way there, and we had time on the way back. And we had time buying whatever it was I was buying, me explaining to them what it was. You can teach your kids how to pick apples and peaches, and how to look for celery that's not turning brown, how to look for dates on the milk. All this kind of stuff. You know what? It won't take you more than about twice as long as it would take you. Twice as long. You know, even for you, it's no longer just a trip to the store. Now it's a date. It's an outing with the kids. Take your kids with you. Let them do stuff with you. Remember, guys, I'm an old guy, right? My baby is 20 years old, so these are all memories for me. I'm not sorry for one trip I made to the store that took me twice as long because I had the kids with me. I'm not sorry for one trip like that. There was nothing else I needed to do that day that I really needed that half hour back for. Nothing. All right? Camping close to home. What am I talking about there? I have to tell you this story really quickly. My first time camping with my son Eric, he was literally probably about 2 years old. And it was muggy and hot, and we had this little 3-man dome tent, so there's plenty of room for the two of us. And we read a couple of books. I took his shoes off, he got in the sleeping bag, and he falls asleep. And I'm just like, I just can't. It's just sweaty, it's yuck. And little by little, all of a sudden, this cool breeze starts to waft through this tent. I'm thinking, man, this is great. You know, where'd that come from? And all of a sudden, I hear this pit-pat of rain, and pretty soon, there's a blockbuster thunderstorm. And there's lightning that 2 seconds later there's thunder. And I'm thinking, we got to get out of this tent. We can't stay back here. And Eric is fast asleep. So I put his shoes on, right? And my wife is now out on the patio, and she's saying, you know, Eric, you know, come on in, blah, blah, blah. So she's out there, so I open the door to this tent. Eric is really literally asleep. I stand him up with his shoes on, and I shove him out the door. And so the first time he wakes up, he's just getting by rain. He was not a happy camper. You knew that was coming. That story is completely true. I'll never forget that time. We went upstairs in the house. We looked back at the tent. By now, it's literally just blowing back and forth. I mean, I couldn't believe it was supposed to be beautiful out that night, except muggy. Anyway, camp out in the backyard. Dates on the next page. Before school, take your kids to McDonald's. They open super early. You can buy breakfast there for, you know, $4. For $8, less than $10 anyway, you and your kid have breakfast before school. Meet them at lunch at the school cafeteria. It's complete chaos. It's a noisy conundrum of sound. But you know what? You'll learn a little bit about their friends that way. It'll be really interesting. You will not be sorry you went. And very few kids' parents meet them at school for lunch. You will be cool in the eyes of their friends when you show up to meet them for lunch. At least when they're in elementary and then sort of 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Maybe you know, high school, maybe not. I did meet some of them in high school, and their friends even thought it was cool there. But I realize not everyone's kids feel that way. Playground fun. Take them out to the playground. Conversation help. We used to have a book called the Kids Book of Questions. And it had questions in it like, if eating a worm sandwich meant you could be in your favorite TV show as the star for 1 week, would you do it? All these sort of ethical or value-related questions. Would it be good or not to do this sort of thing? Family devotionals. Who's got Deuteronomy 6:5 through 9? Go ahead.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Always remember these commands I give you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and walk along the road. Talk about them when you lie down and when you get up. Write them down and tie them to your hands as a sign. Tie them on your forehead to remind you. Write them on your doors and gates.
So, how many of you get, when your kids come home from church, they've got these papers with them? They've colored stuff and they've got Bible stories on them, and you've got this drawer full of papers. You feel guilty throwing them away because it's your kids' work, so the drawer is getting fuller and fuller, but you really don't know what to do with them. I would encourage you to get, again, at Mardell, Lifeway, or wherever, Get a book of children's devotionals on Sunday afternoon. Get everyone together and start by letting the kids tell you what they learned. Let them teach you what they learned. Let them show you their papers. What did you draw on there? What did you learn about? How did you like your Sunday school teacher? How do you like the other kids in your Sunday school class? Find out what's going on in their world on Sunday and let them use their paper as a guide to teach you what they did. Then, you know what? I never felt guilty throwing them out after that. There's only so much room on the fridge, right? So there's only so much room to put all those papers up there. Cooking. Your kids, for the price of 1 dozen eggs, a 3 to 4-year-old can learn to crack eggs. You can start this outside if you want to, go out on the patio tables with a hard bowl and teach them to crack eggs. They'll make an awful mess. You'll hose it off outside. After a dozen eggs, your 3 or 4-year-old can learn to crack eggs. Something that we did a lot of, I did this a lot, was this. I call this the kitchen magician. All this is food coloring. But recently, a couple weeks ago, our kids were home and I made my dad's famous rainbow pancakes. Now you are the first class to ever actually see a photograph of rainbow pancakes. I printed this from the phone. The print didn't come out great, but you can see the colors. So I like to make pancakes really thin, and I make them super thin, and then I take, you've got a big bowl of batter, and you get a little bowl, and put enough in the little bowl to make 4 pancakes or 6 pancakes, and then start with the color at the bottom. So purple, I think, is at the bottom. And make sure you follow the rainbow, because that way your pancakes will really take on the right color. Don't make like yellow after purple. That doesn't work very well. Make blue after purple, right? And then make green after blue, and then yellow after green, and then orange after yellow, and then red. But rainbow pancakes, I posted a picture of this on Facebook, and several of my kids' friends that grew up with them posted comments that I had pancakes. Those appeared at many, many sleepovers in our house. But you can also make pink 7-Up. You can make green milk. You can make green eggs and ham. Yeah, you can make all kinds of stuff with this food color. We've made colored scrambled eggs, colored waffles, certainly colored pancakes. So there's lots of fun to be had in the kitchen. Let your kids squeeze the food coloring. Now, Kristen, my oldest daughter, was extremely compliant. I really don't remember her ever getting a spanking. Katie, who you met here a couple weeks ago, got more spankings than all the other kids combined. Katie is quite enamored of the fact that she has that dubious honor today. She gets a kick out of that. I'll tell you more about her in the next 2 weeks. But one day, Kristen, we were just trying to make a green egg. And so I had separated the white and the yolk. And I was just going to have her color the white part of it green and put the yolk back in and fry it. And I said, just put 1 drop in, because it's just a little tiny white. Well, she squeezed it and a whole bunch came out. And I said, Kristen, remember we talked about the nonverbal component of communication last week? It's not in the words. She was a puddle of tears. That's all it took for her. And so I can't think about food coloring without remembering the lesson I learned with her about just what I said and how fast I was. Just a reflex on my part. She wasn't in trouble. I was just shocked to see that much green food coloring going. Well, that was a dark green egg. That was a pretty dark. She didn't want to touch food coloring for several years after that. We still joke about that. And she was here the weekend we made these, and she did work with me in the kitchen to make the colored pancakes, so it was fun. Out to eat adventure. Tell your kids you're going to take them to Mexico. Go to a Mexican restaurant. Tell them you're going to take them to China. Winter cooking. If you have a wood-burning fireplace, get some skewers. You can roast marshmallows and hot dogs inside in the wintertime when you've got a fire going. We did that a lot when our kids were younger. And I'm gonna move right on here. Well, I'm gonna make this brief comment with their friends. You want your kids to talk to you about their friends, not to talk to their friends about you. Observation from Steve Farrar. You want to be the place that your kids' friends are happy to come. So have them over. Get to know them. This is why, number 2, this is why I think this week is so important for you. Because if you take time now for kids, they will take time for you later. What happens to your kids as they grow older if you're not spending time with them?
You miss it.
They miss it.
You're going to get used to not spending time with you.
That's it. They get used to not spending time with you. You know what? There's going to come a time when you're going to want to what? You're going to want to have some of that time. And they're not going to be interested. I picture it like this. Your kids are building their lives like a brick wall. They're putting bricks in there all the time and building up what's important and what they spend their time on. You want a bunch of those bricks to have your name on them. But if you're not part of their life, are they going to sit around for 2 hours and allocate that time to you and do nothing else waiting for you? You're not going to do that. You wouldn't do that. So some other bricks are going to get put in the spots that your name should be on. And then later, when you want to spend time with them, they're not going to be interested. I want you to listen to this song by famous Christian artist, Harry Chapin. Listen to these words real carefully. He's not really a Christian artist, in case you're
Just the other day, came to the world in the usual way. There were planes to catch, bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy blue, man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad, come on, let's play. Can you keep it throw? I said, not today, I got a lot to do. He said, that's okay, and then he walked away, but he smiled at me and said, I'm gonna be like him, yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. The little boy blue, the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, he came from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have them, please? And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then. I've long since retired, my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids are the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me, he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. And the cat's in the trails.
Okay, just for the sake of time, we'll stop it there. What words jump out at you from that song? It's in the cradle. Yeah. I've always wondered about that. I was wondering about that on the way over. I'm not really sure what that means. What words jump out at you that if I could find the time? What else?
Just like me.
Just like me. You know what? We go right back to Luke 6:40, which I think we talked about the first week. A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone after he's fully trained will be like his teacher. They're going to be just like us. What else? You know what jumps out at me is when the dad calls the grown son. He says, "I'd like to see you if you don't mind." What does the son say?
I'd love to, Dad.
What does he say first?
I'd love to.
I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. Does he mean that? I don't think so. I'd love to, Dad. If he'd love to, would he find the time? He would find the time. He wouldn't love to, because what he learned was what? His dad didn't have time, and he's not important. And he's built the wall of his life with almost no bricks with his dad's name. This is why I think this session is so important for you. And I could argue the next two may be the most important for your kids for a variety of reasons. But this session, I hope, will encourage and cheer you on to do things when your kids are small and as they go through the teen years, so that you will not have the regret later of not really investing in them during this time. I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I'm trying to cheer you on. I want to cheer you on to do it because I can tell you, your opportunity to do this is very short. How many of you have kids over 9 years old? I want you to think about this. Your influence, your time of real influence with your kids over 9 is more than half gone. How many of you have kids more than 6 years old? That time is a third gone. Right? It's at least a third gone. And I would argue the time for the first 6 years, you have the greatest influence. You still have lots of influence, but they pretty much believe everything you say for the first 5 or 6 years. After that, dad and mom start to get a little suspect. Of course, by the time they're 18, you're a complete idiot, and then it boomerangs back up again. A couple other things real quick. Annual work week. If you're working 50 hours a week, how many extra hours is that a year? 40-hour week is roughly 2,000 hours a year. If you're working 50 hours a week, how many extra hours is that in a year's time? 10 hours a week. Extra. 500 hours. If you're working a 60-hour work week, how many extra hours is that over a year's time? 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours. I've worked 50-hour weeks and 60-hour weeks. I don't think I average 50 hours of the time right now. I get it. Sometimes you have to do that. But you know what? If you're doing that week in and week out, you don't have time for a hobby. You don't have time for golf. You don't have time for bowling. You don't have time for the company softball team. Your kids, if you're spending that much time at work, your kids must be your hobby, period. If you're working 40 hours or you've got a sales job, and some weeks you literally have to work 25 hours because you make a few big sales and you're good for the week, go play golf. Have a great time. But if you're literally working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, you don't have time for anything but your family after work. You just don't have it. Just don't have it. Am I making myself clear on this? All right. The pursuit of happiness. I'm going to come back to the other one here in just a second. You know, what's going to make you happy? Let's wrap this up along with looking forward to looking back from retirement. When you're retired, what are you going to want to be doing? Kids, I've got a grandkid and one on the way now. You know what? We have a great relationship with our daughter and her husband. We're welcome there anytime they're welcome at our house. That's where you want to be. You don't get there by not being part of their lives now. We're going to do one more thing. I want you to look at this clock. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to just look at this clock until that red second hand gets back around to the 12. Okay, how long was that minute? That's a long, I hope that was the longest minute you spent here this morning. If it wasn't, I am really messing up here. Why was that minute so long?
Your mind wasn't occupied.
Very conscious of it, and why else?
Your mind wasn't occupied.
Mine wasn't occupied, because I told you weren't allowed to talk and you had to look at the clock. Our whole life can be like that. If we're not careful, our whole life is made up of, I want this other house. I can't think about anything else until I've got a house that's twice the size of the house I have now. I'm not saying it's bad to want a bigger house. I want this car. I'm not going to feel like I've arrived until I drive a Beamer. You know what? Every Beamer someday is a rust bucket. Every Beamer someday is a rust bucket. Someday. I'm not gonna rest until I get to be president of the company. Well, then you get to be president of a $30 million company. What do you want next? President of a $100 million company, right? It's never, if that's the way you think about things, it's never good enough. You've never arrived, because there's always something else. Your Beamer's now 5 years old. There's new Beamers, they have new stuff on them, right? Look sideways. You need to look sideways out the windows on this journey of life. Spend the time with the people you're with right now. Invest the time with people that are important. I'm not saying you shouldn't get a Beamer. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a house that's bigger than the house you have now. But enjoy life. Don't let that become your obsession. Don't think about that 24/7. Don't let that drive you. Be driven by the things that are really important. Be driven by the things that you would think about if you were terminally ill. Because you know what? You are. You are. You think you have between now and about 80 years left. You really don't know. But even if you do, right? Even if I do, I'm telling you, that time goes by really, really fast. I'm speaking as one looking back on it now, and it goes by really, really fast. Let me close our time in prayer, and I will let you go. Heavenly Father, I just really thank you for this group of parents who wants to invest in their kids. I pray that our time together today and every week would be stimulating and encouraging to them to make choices that they won't regret later, and to make choices that build and continue to build on their relationship with their kids. Jesus, thank you for creating us the way you have. Thank you for loving us, and thank you for redeeming us at the cost of your own life. It's in your name I ask the blessing for these parents and their families. Amen. All right, thank you all.